Well, it's always good when people are on the same page, and I will tell you this. AG Letitia James and James Comey are coming out swinging, and they're coming for Lindsay Halligan. Hi, I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva, and I'm here with Kelly Hyman, and we're here to break these issues down for you. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Legal AF for all the things at the intersection of politics and law. So, well, now, AG Letitia James and James Comey, James and James, I guess. Anyway, so they are coming out swinging, wanting to have their cases dismissed on the grounds of selective prosecution. So basically, they're saying that this was all politically motivated and that as a result, the cases should be dropped against them. There's also a motion to disqualify Lindsay Halligan because of the fact that she's an interim U.S. attorney versus one that was fully confirmed by the Senate, gone through the actual process and full vetting. And not to mention, the 2 times she went to the grand jury on both of their cases, those are the first 2 times she's ever been to a grand jury. So, Kelly, what are your thoughts?
I can't wait to see what the judge in this case is going to do, because both sides have pleaded their case to the court. And what that means is, from Comey's standpoint, Letitia James, they have filed a motion, numerous pages, outlaying their reasoning behind the fact that they believe that this case should, in fact, go away. Exhibit number 1, Trump's post on social media about going after them. However, the prosecution also come back swinging as well from their standpoint and basically say that, in fact, that no, that is not the case, that this is not selective, vindictive prosecution at all. And ultimately, the judge is going to make a determination in this matter.
For sure. And I mean, I'm still here like, how are they going to get past all of the volumes of tweets and, well, X's, whatever you want to say, all the posts on Truth Social, all of the media statements from, Caroline Leavitt all the way to the president basically saying that, prosecutions need to happen, enemies need to be punished, that big bold letter post that ended up on Truth Social directed at AG Pam Bondi. Like, how do they think they're going to get past all of this? Because there is a treasure trove of evidence. Normally, when you're talking about selective prosecution, you're trying to subpoena documents, you're trying to dig to find emails of communications. Here, literally, you just need to open your phone and, look at any major news outlet and see the evidence right there. So, Kelly, I mean, is there even a pathway for them to move forward?
Well, the argument is that from their standpoint, doesn't necessarily mean that I agree or disagree with what they're saying.
Hello.
Is that, in fact, that there is probable cause. And so what that means is it's really important when a U.S. Attorney brings a case, they must have probable cause. And so that means that there must be evidence to prove their case. And not only that they can sustain that on appeal. Like, there is sufficient evidence to prove their case. So from their standpoint, from the prosecution's U.S. Attorney's Office, they are asserting that, yes, in fact, there is probable cause in the case. And so you have to look at them twofold, because there are different charges against Comey than there is against Letitia James.
Yeah, there is that. But I mean, how do you think, because I'm looking at the fact that the prior U.S. attorney resigned rather than file charges, because he's like, I'm looking at this, I'm an experienced career prosecutor, I've been to the grand jury more than twice, and I'm seeing there's no factual basis to move forward. And to make it worse, other members of the office, other career prosecutors in the office, mind you, many of whom have served through multiple administrations. So they may have served as maybe not the top U.S. attorney, but they've been in the office under the first, under number 45 and number 47, right? As well as the Biden administration. Some may have gone as far back as Bush. So all of these folks who have this experience looked at the set of facts and said, nothing doing. There's nothing to file here, and resigned in protest rather than file a charge that they know they can't prove. And of course, that brings into the frame all kinds of ethical issues. But again, how is she going to be able, she being Lindsay Halligan, going to be able to go into the court with a straight face and say, yeah, okay, I know people who have actually tried cases and done more than me think that this is a bad idea. Like, how do you get around that,
No one is above the law, no matter who they are. And the
Agreed.
counter argument to that is that she presented evidence to the grand jury, and based on what was presented, the jury did in fact indict. And what that means is in fact that they believe that Comey and Letitia James should be charged with a crime. But some people say you can indict a ham sandwich because it's very one-sided, that the prosecution, U.S. Attorney's Office presents its case. But that would be the counter argument, saying that we brought these charges and in fact, Comey and Letitia James were indicted. So in fact, there is probable cause moving forward. And that's why ultimately the jury now is going to make a determination of whether or not that they should be convicted of those charges.
But to make it worse, I mean, going back, especially when we're looking at AG James's filing around the reasons why she thinks basically she thinks that the prosecution is vindictive, she points to the name calling by the president, which includes describing her as crooked, scum, a monster, and a criminal. How are you going to get past that?
Yes. And so I think it'll be the argument that yes, even though that is the case, that in fact, she's not charged with that. Let's look at the issue at hand and the charges that she's being charged with. And in fact, the prosecution would argue that we can prove the elements of our case, that even though that happened, that would bear no bearing because it doesn't play into the elements of the charge, and the prosecution has the burden to prove their case. Now, ultimately, the judge may say, no way, that's not going to happen. We're just going to have to wait and see ultimately what the judge does in this case.
Well, what I find very interesting is that the judge requested the grand jury transcripts for both of these cases, which is very, like, I hate saying unprecedented because I feel like every day I'm saying unprecedented, but like, judges don't do that, right? They're totally like, all right, you went to the grand jury, cool, whatever, we'll deal with what's in front of us. But to me, the fact that he's trying to pull, not trying, he will get, but the fact that he's pulling the grand jury transcript tells me that he's thinking there's no factual basis for these charges. So my gut instinct is that it's going to be a 1-2 punch. Like, not only is this going to be dismissed for vindictive prosecution, but also, Lindsay Halligan might actually get disqualified because of her status. And interestingly, other U.S. attorneys who have been disqualified on the same grounds, again, because they were interim and didn't properly go through the process by which to become a U.S. attorney, those judges didn't ask for the transcripts or ask for anything around the charges or the cases that they moved forward during their very short tenure. But to see the judge ask for that in this case, yeah, that tells me that he's gearing up for a whooping, and I can't say that he'd be wrong.
It tells me that the judge is being very thoughtful and looking at everything in order to make a determination, which is great, because that's what you want from a judge, to be fair and impartial and look at the evidence, look at the grand jury, what exactly happened. So when the judge makes their determination, they can make it with a complete picture. And I think that that's great. Now, it's also important to remember, if in fact that Lindsay is disqualified, Comey's case is gone because of statute of limitations, because statute of limitations mean that you have a certain amount of time to bring a case. And it was on the cusp of the statute of limitations for him. So if in fact the judge does say, no, she didn't have the authority to do it, then I would say that case is going to be gone for Comey.
For sure. And then on top of everything else, if Lindsay Halligan didn't have enough problems as it is, we got a watchdog group that has entered the chat and was like, yeah, let's take a look at her bar license because she is engaging in so much unethical behavior. We think
allegedly,
supposedly, she is involved in unethical behavior. Again, this is their standpoint. And basically they're like, her law license needs to be revoked, and they want to have the two bars of which she's a member, the Florida bar and the Virginia bar, to investigate and determine whether or not her license should be revoked. Now, this is a watchdog group by the name of the Campaign for Accountability. And so they're asking the bars in both Florida and Virginia to probe misconduct that they argue spans bringing charges not supported by probable cause, just like we were talking about earlier, by probable cause, Kelly, to speaking about the case with a reporter. And, one of the things that they mentioned in the letter was, the evidence appears to demonstrate that, absent President Trump's intervention, neither Mr. Comey nor Ms. James would have been indicted. And by proceeding with the charges that career prosecutors, as well as in Mr. Comey's case, a special counsel appointed by President Trump, deemed unsupported by evidence and by misrepresenting the factual basis of the charges in the indictments, Ms. Halligan appears to have violated her additional responsibility as a prosecutor to refrain from prosecuting charges not supported by probable cause. Woof! Okay, Kelly. What's doing there? Do you think anything's going to happen?
I think that it will be investigated and looked at. I think that as a prosecutor has certain ethical duties. All, attorneys have ethical obligations and duties as well. Ultimately, what they're going to decide will be really interesting. But I definitely think since the watchdog has brought it, it's important to have transparency to know exactly what's going on and see what exactly comes out of it. Maybe nothing, nothing will come out of it. Maybe there will be some repercussions because of it. We're going to have to wait and see on that one.
Well, I will say this. In Florida, a watchdog group by the name of it is Lawyers Defending American Democracy, LDAD. They had previously filed a bar complaint against Attorney General Pam Bondi, and basically the Florida bar kicked it back and was like, well, we can't investigate someone who is a basically currently sitting constitutional official, right? So there's that. But that's Florida, so I don't think she's going to be investigated in Florida. But Virginia, however, is a different ball of wax. So definitely we'll see what happens there. So with that being said, we will be back to keep you posted. I'm Melba Pearson, also known as the Resident Legal Diva. She is Kelly Hyman, who is amazing. And be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Legal AF, where you can find us on a regular basis. Take good care. Bye.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.